Hey guys, it's Mel here. It's about time to do another review. I did Smolov Jr. for bench and it was quite popular. I'll link it below. This review is going to be on 531. It has gained a ton of popularity. There's a lot of people who are quite advanced who use this program, and today we're going to talk about the pros and cons, and I'm going to give you guys a few tips. So just to get right into it, pros of 531, Wendler's 531. So I'm not going to go over what exactly it is. You can look it up online. I'll try to link something that tells you a little bit about it. But I personally feel like, following a program is better than not following anything at all. If you have no idea what you're doing and you want something with somewhat of a structure, some structure is better than no structure. It's an easy to follow program, so you just look it up, plug in your maxes, and there you go, you have a program. You get to PR every day. What I mean by that is every day you walk into the gym and you do an AMRAP. So an AMRAP is as many reps as possible, so it gives you a number, and a number meaning a weight and a set and rep scheme to hit, and you try to do your last set of that exercise for as many reps as possible. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of test where you're at without actually doing a 1 rep max, which is pretty nice. It's pretty fun. It gives you something to look forward to when you're going into the gym, which is nice, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I feel like I could do more, and this program is for, it caters to those people who constantly want to push themselves and want to hit a higher number for their AMRAPs. So Wendler provides some good tips for what to do outside of the program, meaning that it's a 4-day-a-week program, and he mentions that you should be doing some cardio and conditioning on your off days, at least once or twice a week, to maintain some level of conditioning, which I think is really good advice, especially for powerlifters who don't go into the gym and do a lot of endurance work or any cardio or anything like that. It's really good to kind of keep that conditioning so that you're able to do more with your body than just powerlifting. So that's kind of where the pros end for me, and I'll get right into the cons. So where to start with the cons of 531? Now, I like the general idea behind it. I like the way it's structured for the main lifts somewhat. What I don't like is the accessory work that's kind of recommended. There's different variations of accessories that is recommended for 531, but one of the big ones is the I think it's called BBB, boring but big. You do like really lightweight for a ton of sets and a ton of reps. I'm not a fan really, because I believe it's way less than 65% of your max. It's closer to even maybe, I want to say 50%, even less than that of your max that you're doing for these boring but big. And I mean, studies have shown time after time that doing less than like 65% of your max for high volume is not really effective for much in terms of muscle hypertrophy. You'll get a good sweat going because you're doing something, but it's not effective in terms of carryover into muscle building or strength building. So, I mean, it might be something to do if you're a beginner, but if you're advanced or intermediate, I say just swap all that out. Plus, doing compound movements for that many sets and reps. So basically, you have, let's say you're squatting and you're doing your top set of an AMRAP of 5 plus, and then it has you do 5 sets of 10 at some really low weight. So the problem with that is that you could be utilizing your time and your energy doing something that's like an isolateral movement, like lunges or like split squats or like anything that involves doing one leg at a time, that can help counteract any muscle imbalances from squatting, meaning that, when you're squatting, you don't know which side is being favored, especially if you don't have a very trained eye. Sometimes your right leg is favored in one portion of the lift and the other leg is favored for the other portion of the lift. So what ends up happening is that you increase these imbalances over time, especially if you keep constantly doing the same compound movements over and over again. It's really good to add in variations to kind of combat that. So I really I prefer as a coach and an athlete to add in as many isolateral movements as possible to kind of balance out the physique and balance out strength. And I mean, it doesn't really matter if you're not using enough weight anyway, so I guess you're not really doing anything at all in that regard anyway, so you wouldn't be building too many big muscular imbalances at such a low weight. But either way you look at it, you're wasting your time. So I don't like the accessory work that's spit out for you with any of these programs. I feel like accessories should be customized for you, and if you don't know what you're doing, then you could be very misguided by the automated apps and all that choose your accessories for you. So accessories aside, I don't like this program to be used as a powerlifting competition preparation tool because there's no there's no taper and peak. What I mean by that is you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not ever going to get to the point in this program where you're ready for a 1 rep max. Even though it kind of tapers you within the cycle, it doesn't really, because you should be able to hit your 1+ for multiple reps still. So it's not a very good peaking tool at all. And to coincide with that, I'm going to go right into the next con, which is that you start at about 90% of your max for the program, right? Which is a really good way to go about writing programs, is you kind of take into consideration that you don't want to be working at such high percentages where, let's say, you pulled a weight off the floor in ideal conditions basically, or in a peaked condition, or you count a rep that wouldn't have counted in the gym. So taking 90% of your max accounts for all of these not necessarily errors, but kind of inflations of your numbers. Excuse me for a sec. Talking makes my throat dry. So taking 90% of your max is a useful tool because people tend to overinflate their numbers. Now, for me, I don't overinflate my numbers at all. I know what I get. But for someone who doesn't, it could be pretty cool. But what ends up happening is this. You do your first cycle. Your first cycle is probably going to be okay. The first month, you'll be fine. But look at what happens over time. So you take 90% of your max. Let's say your max is 200 pounds, and this could be for any of your lifts. Your max is 200 pounds, so that means 90% of your max is what, 180 pounds. So you're working off of this 180 pound number. So every cycle, 531 tells you add 10 pounds to, let's say it's your squat or your deadlift. So let's say you're a 200 pound squatter. It takes 90% of your max. You're at 180. That's fine. Cycle 1, you're good. You hit a bunch of reps at your designated AMRAPs over the amount that's designated. So for your 5 AMRAP, you hit 8. For your 3 AMRAP, you hit 5. For your 1 AMRAP, you hit like 4 or 3 or whatever. That's all fine and good. But now your next cycle, it tells you add 10 pounds to your training max. So your max is now 190. Okay, but your max is probably much higher than that. And then so that's 1 month that went by, 2 months that went by. The third month, or your third cycle, it says add another 10 pounds. So now you're at the max that you were, now you're training at the max that you were at 2 months ago. And then it'll take you another month. And at this point, it kind of gets ridiculous, because if you're hitting PRs on every training session, you might be at like 14 reps for your squat. In your week 1 for your 5 AMRAP, you could be at 14 reps to PR. You get what I mean? So in order to PR, you'd have to hit that number 14 times. It becomes like this ridiculous thing. So it basically provides you with no real strength gains. So if you have the app that graphs your strength for you, you'll go up really high because it started your training max so low. So you'll see a really strong gain, and then you'll level out and you'll kind of go down, because now it's kind of calculating your max based off of 14 reps or more. And it's kind of ridiculous, because that's anybody who estimates their strength off of like a 14 rep set, it's kind of ridiculous. So it doesn't really make sense, and you're not, at that point, you're not building strength anymore. You're just doing a bunch of hypertrophy work, and you're not really gaining any strength. You're going to plateau at some point. So it's not really good for those who are honest with their training maxes, and it's not good for those who are beginners or intermediates or coming off an injury, because you're going to be advancing far faster than the program is advancing, and therefore you're not going to reap the benefits of it. Now, if you're at the front end of advanced, to where you are gaining 10 pounds every cycle, 10 pounds of strength every cycle, then this is perfect for you, because that's what it programs for. It programs for a 10-pound gain. So an advanced lifter would gain more out of it, because it would force them to work with heavier weights every time, and they may not hit these crazy high numbers for their AMRAPs. So that would be perfect. So that ends my pros and cons. We'll go right into my tips for you. So my tips are, after each cycle, recalculate your numbers, your 5-3-1 core squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press numbers, based off of your estimated 1 rep max for that cycle. So traditionally, you would just add 10 pounds every cycle. So what I'm telling you to do is just recalculate the whole thing based on your new maxes. Just recalculate it every single cycle, because that will give you a less volume to work with. So you'll be working with smaller numbers, meaning smaller reps per set, meaning you're not going to be in a position where you're squatting for 14 reps for your AMRAP. You'll be squatting closer to the numbers that the AMRAP sets you at, meaning if you're at 5 reps, you'll be squatting between 4 and 7 or 8 on a good day. If you're at 3 reps, you'll be squatting closer to 2 to 5, which is where you should be. You shouldn't be at like the teens at all ever in this program. If you find yourself repping a certain weight for like 12 or more, or even 10 or more, you're working with way too small numbers weight-wise. So another tip, do accessories that make sense for you. So meaning you have to look at where your weaknesses are and work off of that. Meaning if your deadlift has, you're not locking out very well, do rack pulls or do banded deadlifts, etc. For your squat, let's say you'll have you're not hitting depth, or you're weak at lockout, or you're whatever. You have to do accessories based on that. Or if you want to address your muscular imbalances, do that. I'm a fan of addressing muscular imbalances personally. I know for powerlifters, they don't really care about what a muscle looks like, or things like that, or if one side's working more than the other. They just care about moving the most amount of weight possible. That's cool. Just do that, stick with it, do things that aid in that. But for me, if I see the hamstrings are smaller proportionally than the quads, we work on hamstrings. I see if the left side is dominant, we work on isolateral movements, etc. Another thing, only use this for an off-season program. If you're going into meet, don't run 5-3-1. Seriously, don't run any of these template programs. Doing a program for meet, you have to do a customized program. You have to either do it for yourself or buy one. It should be tailored to your recovery, and a lot of people have trouble assessing where they're recovering, how much they're recovering, how heavy it should feel, how heavy it should be, when to peak, when to taper, when all that stuff. So, and when to deload, all that. So you need to have someone with a good eye, not only assess your form, assess the accessories you need, but they also need to be there to help you assess your recovery, your maximum recoverable volume. It's kind of nice to have somebody there who can help you with those things, and having a template doesn't help. Now, if you can't afford it, or if you don't want to get a coach, or if you're just doing it for fun, I mean, take this advice how you will, but that's just how I feel, and that's how I would approach it. So let me know your feedback if you've tried it. Let me know how your experience goes. I'm not hating on it as a program. I think it's a good base, it's a good foundation. It's just missing a few customization tools, and if you can customize it for yourself to make it a better program, then that would be great for you. So let me know what you think of this video, and good luck with your competitions, guys. Bye.